the original. And thank you guys for coming. I hope you're having a good time. I'm excited about this. If you grew up at the same time I did, this movie gave you nightmares for days and made you look at cats in a cool way. So first we're going to introduce our panelists. I'm really excited to bring in Denise Crosby. And next, the little boy that you loved and looked under your bed for, Miko Hughes. And last but not least, Victor Pascal himself, Brad Greenquist. So thank you guys for joining us today. I've just got a couple of questions for you all, and then I'm going to pass it out to the audience. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about was this movie was very intense. It scarred a lot of people growing up, including myself. And I just wondered, can you tell us how it was for you filming this and how it affected you? Because you were really young.
You know, it scarred me deeply personally. I'm still trying to get over it. The trauma of making this film. No, I mean, really. Really, it scarred you? Yeah. No. Show me. Show me your story. Show me.
No, but to me, it made it where nobody is safe. Like, this was one of the first times I really saw a child that had been killed in a film and then came back in that way. And to me, that was one of the most terrifying parts of this movie, was nobody was safe.
I think what it speaks to me on that note is that the family, the parents couldn't deal with the death of a child. And I can't imagine why they would be able to deal with the death of a child. I'm always amazed that anyone is able to, tragically have to go on with their life after that. I wasn't a parent when I made Pet Sematary. I am since a parent, and I watched the scene in which Miko was hit by that truck, and it's almost unbearable to watch. And it was almost unbearable to act without having, had a child yet, and now having a child. So it wasn't to me about, the death of a child. It was about the parents not being able to deal with the death of a child.
I don't have kids yet. I think it's hilarious.
Wow, this generation, what can I say now? Where did we go wrong?
I couldn't help myself. But no, it's heartbreaking. I think what Pet Sematary has that maybe a lot of other horror movies don't have is it's based in real life horror and things that can actually happen. Yes, there is a supernatural element, but it's
We
not.
think, maybe not.
Well, possibly, yeah. It's grounded in the story of a family and what happens to that family. It's not just a creature, a boogeyman. And that's like, it's got both elements. It's like supernatural horror and the reality of our mortality. That's right.
How do I follow that up? These guys are brilliant.
Just making it up as I go along.
No, this movie, it's pretty hard hitting, but from my perspective, look, I was playing this guardian angel, bloody as it was, still, and as hard hitting as the movie was, I would like to believe that we're being looked after by some sorts of spirits hovering about and trying to help us. So that's kind of how it affected me, and it was pretty good, you know. So I would hope so. I mean, I'm looking out over you guys, and I see hundreds and hundreds of Victor Pascals hovering about you, right over your heads, and you don't even see them. But I do.
So one thing, you all have worked in various genres, with Star Trek, with this, with Walking Dead. One thing that I really, really love is that now genre films are getting a lot more respect. Finally. And I love how people can use genre. King is a master of this, using genre for telling morality tales and giving messages and talking to things that normally people wouldn't realize. And with Pet Sematary, it was really about loss, like you said. It was really about letting loss just eat you alive. And I wanted to see from all three of you, can you talk about using genre and the work that you've done to talk about these tales and give these morality lessons?
Wow, that's deep. You know, you're talking about the exact thing, that they're metaphors and for our deepest psychic fears and our you know, our cultural inadequacies and our losses and that's what the best can do for us in the genre, so to speak, especially horror. You know, horror, you know, as we know, there's all kinds of different horror films and levels of horror films, but goddamn, I like a good horror film, and I have since I was a kid. And I grew up watching horror films, and when I got to be in a Stephen King film, I thought, man, this is like being in a Scorsese film. You know, this is that level to me, and it remains that way, and I feel honestly that way. Stephen King has been able to, you know, tap into real life fears and dramas that challenge, you know, our perceptions and how just as The Walking Dead, you know, The Walking Dead to me is not about the zombies. It's about what would you do if? What would you do if? And we don't know the answer to that, you know? And that's why we watch, because we go, oh my God, they're gonna do that? And that was what Pet Sematary was like to me. Dale Midkiff's character of, you know, Mr. Creed? What was his first name? Lewis! Oh my God. Okay. Lewis.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, honey. It's been a long night. Lewis, I've signed so many Rachels, I didn't sign any Lewises tonight. Lewis was, you know, he couldn't deal. He could not deal with this. You know, what would you do? I think as, you know, again, I just talk about myself as a mother. There's not a day that goes by that probably somewhere in my psyche there's like, God, don't ever let me have to make that choice, you know, or what do I do if? But you know, it's there. So this is the best of horror, creeps in on the senses, into the subconscious. And you're watching one of these films, and you're experiencing your you know, sort of psychically living this safely from the seat of your own theater. But you're able to, you know, visit this journey for a little bit.
Nailed it. What was the question?
Using genre for morality tales.
Genre for morality tales. Yeah, horror does a bit of that. It takes it to the extreme. I think it just taps into something primal. I think that's why people have such memories and strong associations to it. Why there's horror conventions and there's not necessarily comedy movie conventions. You don't really see that. Horror really strikes a chord with us and leaves an impact. And yeah, there's a lot of moral lessons that can be learned there, and I get a lot of warnings about the dangers of what could be out there, and a lot of fun. They're fun date night movies to make out to. So.
That too.
I would say, you know, look, the film, like Martin Scorsese says, the film is genre. There's no, you don't have a film without a genre. But when you talk about the horror genre, like Miko said, it just takes it to an extreme, and it's, to me, they're very much more like Greek myths, because they go to these extremes. And as Denise said, what do you do if? And horror films are kind of like warnings, you know, like the Greek myths, like Oedipus, you know, this is what could happen, right? And in a metaphorical sense. So I think they really serve our culture in a very positive way. I mean, I think all films are in some way a morality tale. What do you do when this happens? And we need heroes, and we need villains, and it helps us to sort things out in our society and in our culture. But horror movies, they just do go to the extreme, and that's just a lot of fun. It's a fun ride. I think you would all agree with that.
Exactly. So we're going to hand it over to the audience now. So raise your hands, and that lovely gentleman there with the microphone will come to you.
I just got one question first. Sorry, then I'll be able to discuss. But anyway, Miko, I'm sure this is probably a no for you, but Denise and Brad, did either of you guys read Pet Sematary prior to being introduced to the film, going out for the film, and what were your thoughts when you read it?
I had just an extraordinary time reading the novel. I had read a number of Stephen King novels before Pet, and I was just, you know, a fan of his literature. You know, I had read The Shining and The Stand and Cujo, and you know, I was a big Stephen King reader. And then I was shooting a movie in Nashville, and I had gotten the role of Rachel Creed in Pet Sematary, so I had the novel with me, and I had never read it, and so I was staying in a really old historical hotel in Nashville, Tennessee, and I remember, you know, in my room one night, reading to prep, because that was the next job I was going to do, and I'm in bed reading, as one does, and the big old closet door just went, and I just threw that damn book across the room and didn't pick it up again until like I was safely in sunlight in some big crowded place with a lot of people. I was scared to death reading that book. It was just, you know, haunting. I remember, and the actor Julian Sands was in this movie with me, and I just told him the next day, oh my God, and he had done Mary Lambert's first film. So it was really this kind of wonderful confluence of things. He and I were doing a movie, but he had appeared in the director of Pet Sematary, Mary Lambert's first film, which was called Siesta. So he had a role. So we had already a dialogue going about, I'm about to work with Mary Lambert, and you know, I'm reading this movie and this Stephen King book, and I'm scared to death, and and you know, it was really kind of my fun experience of reading Pet Sematary.
I hadn't read any Stephen King when this one came along. I had seen a number of his films made of his novels, but I hadn't read. At the time, I was reading these Russian novels, you know, Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and all that stuff, the big-headed stuff. So I hadn't read it, but after booking the film, of course, I read it several times, and I read a number of his other novels, and then I read just a lot of New England ghost stories that people had written down, you know, the things that had been floating around New England for a long time. And then on the set, I always had a copy of the novel with me, and I would read, before we would launch into a scene, I would always reread that section of the novel to make sure I'm like getting everything. Because even though Stephen King wrote the screenplay, you can't put all that detail that's in a novel into the screenplay. So I used both the screenplay and the novel to guide me in all of my scenes, and that was very, very helpful. So was that answering the right question? I'm not sure.
That was pretty good.
I think I just colored in a bunch of pages with crayon.
You couldn't even hold a crayon.
Hold a scalpel.
We got two questions right over here, and then I'm going to go to the young lady over there that's had her hand up the whole time.
Hi, my question is for, can I call you Denise? Miss Crosby? How dare you?
Can you call me? That's so sweet. Of course you could call me Denise.
So you said at the beginning that you didn't have children when you made the film, but since you made the movie that you have had children.
I've had 10 since the
Oh my
film.
gosh.
No, I'm kidding.
Good job.
Starting a cult?
I got a little excited and carried away. No.
So since you had children now, if you had been offered the part after having children, would you have taken it?
Oh God, yes. I mean, that wasn't, although, there, you know, that's an interesting tangent I'm gonna go on. You know, I would have, because, I mean, there were many factors. Number one, it was a big studio film. I mean, who am I to, you know, not do it? It was my great friend Mary Lambert directed. It was a Stephen King film. So, I mean, you know, there was no reason I was excited to do it. That being said, the film many times was moments away from being canceled from the studio. They, as Stephen himself says in a revised edition of the book, in the foreword, that it was probably the most horrifying story he ever wrote. And the studio felt they may have gone too far with the matricide element of the film. There was, you know, the child that kills his mother may be too far for people to really deal with, to accept. And that's, I you know, right, you know, I get their fear and you know, my compliments to them that they went forward. They didn't buckle under some concern.
Alright. Hi, my question's for Nico. Since you were so young when you filmed it, how old were you when you got to see the movie, or did you?
I had seen some of the scenes growing up, some of the tamer scenes of myself, and I think it was like a slow progression up until finally watching it from start to finish when I was about 12 with a friend. And the parts that really scared me were the Zelda scenes, because those were brand new to me. A lot of the scenes that I was in, I had like this, even if I didn't remember it, it was like a weird, vague familiarity. And I think it had been talked about a lot, so I kind of knew what happens in the movie, even though I hadn't seen it yet. Yeah, 12 for the first time, all the way through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right back over.
The only question is, wasn't nowhere near how it actually happened. Did it ever like ruin it for you? Because like it ruins the magic. And also, did any of you ever meet Stephen King?
Well, Stephen was part of our rehearsal process for the first 2 weeks we arrived in Maine. You were slowly coming in, but obviously you didn't have to be part of our rehearsal. Were you there in Maine yet?
No, I wasn't.
So before we started first day of shooting, Mary Lambert and Dale Midkiff and I and Stephen and Fred Wynn got together. Please. Got together in a little rehearsal space for 2 weeks before we ever shot yet. And so Stephen was very present and graciously so and openly so, and allowed us to ask whatever we had questions about, and he answered everything, was so open and giving, and so that was invaluable, and that is rare. That is just a real rarity and valuable. The other part you were asking about, were we freaked out by what was behind? You know, Zelda freaked me out. Zelda freaks everyone out, and Zelda freaked me out while I was shooting with her. Yeah.
For myself, with an answer to that question, I don't watch a movie like you all watch a movie. You know, I see every movie I watch, good makeup job, great light, good camera move, very nice performance in that shot. You know, that's how I see it, and it doesn't ruin anything. It actually increases my appreciation for a film, because I look at it, you know, basically as a craftsperson. I see it in the little pieces that make up a really good movie, or you know, a movie that's not so good. So I don't, and I haven't for a long time seen a movie the way you all see a movie. You know, so it's a different kind of appreciation, I think. Yeah. Does that make sense? Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, sorry, what was the exact question again? It was like, does watching a movie when you filmed a movie, is it different?
It was like,
Does it ruin it?
behind the scenes of working on the movie, does it change how you look at the movie when it's over,
Thank
or
you.
in general?
Sure, yeah. I think, well, especially with Pet Sematary, for me, I can disassociate more than anything else I've been in, because I was so young, I looked so different, I remember the least of it. The later stuff, like a scene will trigger a memory of, oh, that day or that location. So it's more of like I would actively have to stay engaged with the story. Not bad, but it just, you know, a memory will pop in your head. Pet Sematary, I can kind of watch it separate and disassociate, pretend, you know, think of it not as myself more so. I think it's kind of unique that way compared to the rest of the stuff.
All right, Brian, over here, so to your left.
How did you carry your mom to the attic?
To the attic. Zombie powers, the undead strength, piece by piece.
We can't, I want to know why you're asking that question. Okay?
Is your mom with you right now?
Right? Show me your mom.
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Mom, you may not want to go to sleep tonight.
Try to take her up to the attic. It's not that hard. You can do it.
Mommy.
Over here to your
Cosby.
You gotta speak into the mic, bud. Can't hear you. Sorry.
There we go, John.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got a good question for you. What got you into doing a movie like that, considering, you know, your father's past and stuff? And what do you think about Hollywood and them not coming up with anything original? Because they got the new Pet Cemetery out.
I think there's new films out there. There's originality, and I think there is a lot of remakes. And the reason there's remakes is people are going to see them. And I think remakes only help the original. It just adds to the available options of the story. There's different interpretations, and it's all beneficial. You know, some people may have opinions one way or another about one version or another, but it adds to the fact that it's being talked about, and it keeps it interesting. So I appreciate it, definitely.
Also, Hollywood from the very beginning it's a clash of commerce and art, and commerce has in the United States and Hollywood has always won, always. So whatever makes money, that is what the studios need to make money, and we all need to make money. So that is more important than being original. Original doesn't really have much to do with the entertainment industry. It's whatever, trying to guess at what will bring in the most people who will pay to see something. So it's like any other product, it's to make money. And if you can be original, that's nice on the artistic side, but it doesn't necessarily give you a successful film. I can think of a lot of really great original films that never made a penny. So that's just the nature of the beast, you know?
There's a certain level of you know, that our film qualifies for a remake. There's kind of a nice, you know, homage that we even have that standard to qualify for someone to want to make a remake.
That's an honor.
It's an honor. It's a compliment, you know. And we'll watch it, you know, just as all of you will watch it, and we'll root for it as we go for any movie that, you know, we go to see and want it to succeed. You know, I respect these actors that are in it. I respect the source material, and you know, I'm going to be tickled to watch who plays Rachel Creed and go, you know, oh my God, wow, maybe I'll be surprised. I hope to be surprised. But all in all, I think that the fact that it qualifies for a remake is an honor.
Speaking of making money, Miko, how many pops have you signed this weekend already?
This is the excuse me. This is the first time I've seen the pops. I guess they just came out. So yeah, it's been a few. I haven't been keeping count, but it's pretty cool. It's kind of wild.
I think that's neat that they have a pop.
Totally.
Yeah, and a cat.
Yeah, occasionally.
Don't get me started on the goddamn cat. Okay, okay.
The cat got popped and you
Can the cat's agent please call me? I want to be represented by Church's agent, because that cat is on everything. Get it away.
Far left over by the wall.
Wow, it sounds like there's a story behind the cat. Now I want to change my question. I play in what ifs a lot, so I was wondering, what if the Pet Cemetery worked like it was supposed to? How would you have explained 5 years later why Gage was still 2 years old?
Was there a time gap? 5 years? I'm confused.
I was just wondering because, like, if he came back from the Pet Cemetery,
Oh, would he
as he
decay over
died,
time?
he never would have aged. He would have been like a vampire zombie.
Yeah.
But Whereas from The Walking Dead, we understand zombies don't age. So 5, 10, 12 years later, how would you explain why your 2-year-old was still 2?
Yeah, I think eventually something would happen. It would just decay in some weird way, maybe. I've always had a weird thought, what if you put dinosaur bones in the pet cemetery?
Wait, I'm kind of digging the idea that you don't age as a zombie. Oh my God, so I'm like 30. I'm 30.
You just have to like rehydrate. I
Love that idea.
listened to a podcast recently that had this really interesting idea that Jason was like under the lake. It was a pet cemetery type situation because they never really touch on his origin or how he stays. He's like a zombie. He doesn't die. I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I think we ought to call Mr. King and ask him.
Yeah.
We're just shooting
What's
the
the word
dark
on
here.
that?
Yeah. Steven, how do
This
you
went a
solve
whole direction I did not think we could go.
Right?
Still over by the wall.
When you were filming, did it ever get like hard to film or any like emotional scenes?
My biggest struggle was not crapping my pants. It was close at times.
Wow. Wow. I never changed your diaper, that's for sure. You weren't wearing diapers though at that point. I hope not. I don't think so. No, that would have been weird. That would have been weird. Wow. Yes. The hardest thing for me shooting was Gage's funeral. It was really hard, technically as an actor, but emotionally, certainly, as a person going through that. But it was a very hard day to shoot, and I had to kind of keep a level of emotional intensity. It was a great acting lesson actually for me that day. I really learned a lot how to stay at a certain level emotionally all day and be able to sustain that.
I can only imagine how draining.
It was brutal. It was so tiring. It was exhausting that when I drove home, I had a rental car and I had a rental house because we were all staying in Maine for a couple months shooting. It was dark at night and I was driving back to my cabin in the woods that I mistakenly rented during the daylight and now am staying making Pet Cemetery, and I'm driving home absolutely spent. I was wiped out, and I'm in my car and I'm driving down a darkened highway from the church that we were, the mortuary that we were actually filming out all day, and boom, a fox runs in front of my car. And I hear, and I've never hit an animal in my life in the car. And I have been crying all day filming this day. And I go, oh my God! And I stop the car, and I get out of the car on the highway, and I'm looking for a fox. And I don't see a fox. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm making Pet Cemetery, and I hit a fox. I hit a fox. Oh,
At least you know where to take
my
it.
God. I was now crying. I didn't think I had a tear left in my body. I can't find the fox. I get back in the car. I go back to my haunted house on the edges of the water in Maine, and I call my husband. I get the answering machine, of course, and I'm like, I hit a fox. I hit a fox. And he, I don't know what he thought. He probably thought I'd lost my mind by that moment when he heard that machine, answering machine. Remember answering? We didn't have it, there was no internet back then. And oh my God, I don't know, that was really interesting, really weird. Never found the fox.
Over here to your right.
So, okay, when I told my sister I was coming here and you guys would be here, her thing was like, oh no, Pascal, I don't even want to talk about it. And I thought he was always very comforting to me. So, my most horrifying scene, if anyone says a horror movie, what is the scariest thing ever? I go, Pet Sematary, Zelda. Anytime I open a door in a dark room, I just see her kind of like that jump and run across the room thing. So any horror movie or any scary thing, what has stuck with you the most like that? What was the most maybe like traumatic scene you can think of?
For me, that's easy. Psycho. Psycho just terrified me as a kid, and it still does. It still does. That ending is just so scary.
Jaws. Every time I get in the ocean. It's 4 notes, so I have to, actually 2 notes. And I tortured my son. He doesn't, poor thing. He can't use the word, he won't go near water. He won't go near, he's 6'4", 20 years old, strapping baseball, won't go, I just go,
Yeah, I think I gotta go with Zelda, because that was the first horror movie that I sat down and watched all the way through, and that it got to me for a little while. I'm sure there's been others here and there, and then when this is over, I'll remember like, oh yeah, I should have sat down. But that's the one that immediately comes to mind.
Right here in the middle.
I wanted to know what it was like to work with Fred Gwynn, for one, because that guy is amazing. And everything I've ever seen him in. But what the hell are 2 years? For one, anyway, I don't know anybody who's seen My Cousin Vinny, but he was in that too. I mean, the guy was amazing. But also, a comment, I think that they could have picked anybody better, to replace him, but John Lithgow. That guy is also a legend. But yeah, Fred Gwynn, if you have any favorite stories or anything, I'd love to hear them.
I don't remember much of them. I just want to give a shout out to the South Park character they did, Fred. Favorite episode.
well, I grew up with the Munsters, okay? That was my TV show, and I didn't want to say anything, I didn't want to go, oh my God, but I was a little bit starstruck, and I got over that quickly as I began to get to know him in Maine, and his wife, Debbie, and his incredible soft heart, his children's book writing, and his vulnerability, his ability to be vulnerable with his stature and his height. A lot of people, a lot of actors won't show their vulnerability. And Freddie had a really extraordinary path through Hollywood, and he was great. And he was gracious enough to share that. He was in the beginnings of television, as we know it, with a series called Car 54, Where Are You? And that's even, obviously before probably any of us here, and was a star. And then he was lucky enough to get the Monsters, where he was so, he was a rock star at that time in Hollywood. And when the Monsters ended, he couldn't get arrested. He couldn't get a job. And he went from here to here within a year. And he had a family, and he house, and he had a number of kids, and he went from, there to there so quickly, and had to absolutely reinvent himself, but he never gave up. He never gave up. He went back to New York, and he started from scratch, and he basically went back to the theater, which he knew, which he started from. And he was willing to be the guy that walked out on stage with a cup and handed it to the lead. And remember, this was a guy that was the #1 star in Hollywood for TV. And, he'd go back to the wings, and he'd do that play. The next play he maybe got, if he was lucky enough, he had a line, and went, "Yes, sir," and came back. And he reinvented himself, and eventually Francis Ford Coppola cast him in The Cotton Club, which he gave him a role as, some and really off-center really against type, but gave him a part of a New York gangster. And he slowly rebuilt his career. And the beautiful thing about Fred was he owned that. He wasn't ashamed of that. He wasn't trying to make other stories up or not, be dishonored by that. This is the job. We don't know what we're lucky enough to be sitting up here right now answering your questions. And that's my takeaway, apart from his absolute perfect performance as Judd Crandall. He nailed it. So I have I love John Lithgow, so you can't compare. But I know that Fred Gwynne nailed Judd Crandall. And I am honored to be really that power of talent.
I have a story about Fred. We didn't have any scenes together, but we saw each other a lot on the set. Often he was finishing up and I was coming on, or the other way around. We had lunch together a lot as well. Anyway, one night I was there and he was getting off, and I said, "How's it been going?" And because I hadn't been there in a few days, and he said, rough night last night, rough. That was tough last night. I said, "Why?" And he said, I wanted to, I had the scene where I had to say, I think it was with Dale, and I had to say, I think I'm responsible for all of this, and really wanted the tears, but they weren't there. There weren't any tears. Dry as a desert. And I said, "So what'd you do?" And he said, after a couple of takes, I thought, what am I going to do? And they had to fiddle with some camera stuff, so I drank 3 cups of coffee and smoked 4 cigarettes, and they were right there.
Oh, God. Yeah. Legendary.
Back to the left.
Back in 1989, when I first saw the movie, I didn't even know anything about studios or how they were filming and things like that. But I've always wondered, being the Pet Cemetery was across from the home, was it actually filmed way off somewhere else with the cemetery than the house itself?
I don't remember.
Is the location of the actual Pet Cemetery very
The
far off from the house?
The kind of cool thing in Maine, and by the way, you should check out the documentary about the making of Pet Cemetery, Untold and Unearthed and Untold, the making of Pet Cemetery, because these guys, these incredible documentarians, went to where we filmed. So we were in Hancock, basically, in Maine, and the Creed house was an actual house, it wasn't a set. It's, on the corner of this fabulous, with a main highway going right by it. It was a beautiful house across the as in the book, was the Judd Crandall house. So I don't know how they did this, but they didn't have to, you know, as in the book, the Crandall house sits across the street from the Creed house, and that was how it was, for real.
That's pretty lucky, yeah.
I mean,
Usually
that's
they have to
unheard of.
facade,
You
right?
you would find a great Creed house, and then maybe the Crandall house would be a mile away, 5 miles away, whatever. It wouldn't be exactly as it is in the book. So that was, I've never seen that since. I've never shot anything like that that is actually replicating the book. So the entire town, you know, turned out. We had all kinds of extras and energy from the town to help us make this film. It was a big deal, this Hollywood movie coming, you know, to Maine to do this. But tell me your question, because remind me of your question once more.
How far away was the house from the...
Oh, from the Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
So the Pet Cemetery, I recall, was not exactly where, you know, you had to drive a little bit, but not much. You know, it was a little bit away. The path was there.
Imagine them having to hike up that climb with all the lights.
Well, yeah.
Gets in the actual path. That was a big way to get there.
Yeah.
Well, the Pet Cemetery, I recall it was, we had to drive there.
Yeah,
We were taking the vans over there, and it was like behind the 7-Eleven or something like that.
It was behind Bob the Lobster.
It was behind some, you know, some store where there was some woods or something like that, where they were able to, there was a clearing and they could build it without destroying the environment. You know?
Right.
And it was, the set design for that was great. It was really, really
Gorgeous,
good.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
This will be the last question right in the middle.
This is for Denise. Can I call you darling?
Can you call me darling?
Yes, can I?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
You're a good-looking guy. You can call me anything you want.
Once again, this panel is taking a complete turn that I had not expected.
As we do at these things on a late night. What time is it? Oh my God, it's 10 of 8. Of course, no, at 8 you can call me darling. Not before 8.
So you said earlier that you thought it was Lewis's inability to deal with Page's death.
Yes.
I think one could argue maybe that Rachel's perception of death had an impact on how he proceeded with things after Page passed away. What are your thoughts on that?
That's really wonderfully twisted, interesting. I think kind of a foreshadowing to all of this is Rachel's scene when she finally tells Lewis how she, you know, had to endure what she had to do as a child and deal with Zelda. And, you know, that her parents, you know, it was too much for her as a child. And I think all of that plays into, you know, the vulnerability and the tenderness and the inability, you know, their longing to make a family that isn't what she had to endure. And I love that you mentioned that. That's a really layered, and I think that our movie has a lot of those layers. And Mary Lambert, who is the incredible director of this movie, she is about that. She likes the layering of stuff, and you don't even know she's layering. And she is thinking of that. And you know, we were blessed with her as a director, and a kind of groundbreaking director, because she got to do, and I'm not like out here trying to tout, the feminist card and for its own sake, but in this context, but you know what, it really needs to be said. She did something that wasn't done before. She made a studio badass horror film as a female groundbreaker. And I want to acknowledge her for that. And she was just the delight to work with, and I wish she was here with us because she's so funny and fun, and Arkansas little baby, and she's always creating stuff. She's an artist. She was a painter. She went to art school. She didn't go to film school. She went to art school. So she created a painterly palette for this film. When you see Gage in his beautiful velveteen Victorian kind of, outfit, that's crazy shit. That's not evil. That's like, what? Or you cast Zelda, Andrew plays Zelda. That's just her painterly mind, her RISD graduate painterly mind. The stuff with Pascal. I mean, it's ethereal. She works in an ethereal way, and so I think she took Stephen's novel and elevated it, and I think Stephen would say the same.